everyone, and thank you for joining us for another Rocket Matter webinar. My name is Nefra McDonald. I am the Business Development and Strategic Partnership Coordinator at Rocket Matter. Today we're going to be talking about Business Development for Lawyers 101. This is a 40-minute session. We're going to try to pack as much information into this session as possible, so get ready to learn a lot. If you've got any questions for us as we're going through the presentation today, please put them in the questions widget of your GoToWebinar control panel, and we will get to them either during the presentation, and we'll also leave a couple minutes at the end to get to your questions. So with that, I would like to introduce our presenter today. Today we have the privilege of having Jeff Shabbatz with us. Jeff is a former Lehman Brothers investment banker. He was there from 1988 to 1992. He deferred business school. He wanted to be an entrepreneur, and he spent the majority of his career founding a payment processing company called Charge Card Systems. So he sold that company in 2012, and he spent the past 5 years working with CEOs of public and private companies, helping them with strategy and how to increase their profitability. So he's the perfect person to be talking to you about the topic at hand today. He's the co-founder of LexCharge, and that was co-founded in 2016, and he's going to be spending the majority of his time on LexCharge starting September 1st, 2017. So he's a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, the Business Journal. He's also a best-selling author on Amazon. He has 6 hardcover books published to date. He's also a member of the Young Presidents Organization Miami chapter, and the list goes on and on. So Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today. We're looking forward to learning.
Thank you so much for the introduction. And the only way to become a best-selling author is to beg your parents and your friends to buy lots of books. So that's that's how that happens. Okay. All right, on to the presentation. So I am not an attorney. I have family and friends, many of which are attorneys. But for this conversation about Business 101, I look at a law firm just like any other business. And we're going to go through some of the metrics and some of the skills that I've learned over the past 30 years that I hope are applicable to you in growing and running your law practice. So the first thing is, on the next slide, is one thing that I have learned is working on your business, not in your business. So many attorneys and so many executives are so busy every day putting out their fires, and they really don't have time to think strategically about their business. They're always in the planning and the execution mode, but really at the end of the year, have they executed their plan? And for many of us who are super type A overachieving people, I have found when I've done private consulting, at the end of the year, they haven't achieved their goals. So one thing I would first suggest, and even though we're mid-year with summer ending, is spend some time, whether it's going on a retreat, whether it's just having some downtime. And this applies whether you're a sole proprietor, whether you have a growing practice with many attorneys, or even our national firm. You really need to work on, not in. So that was the first thing I wanted to talk about. And given the amount of hours that you all work, and we all work throughout our week, please spend that time. And it's, many people can do meditation, yoga, really try to get outside your comfort zone and think strategically. And again, if you have any questions, just please shoot them over to us, and we can look at them. If they're relevant for that's part of the discussion, I will answer them on the spot. Some of the key issues that I think about when running my 3 companies, and I've started and sold 3 companies to date, successfully exited 1 to a public entity and the other 2 to private entities, is some of the key issues that we should be looking for: top line revenue, 2, the employee base. And there are so many ways now with the millennials to get great employees, but you need to think creatively how to find these people for your firm. The prospecting. Many attorneys that I have become friends with they spend so much time doing the day-to-day that they don't have the time to do the networking, and we could talk about networking a little further down in the presentation. And then it's the referring partnerships. And one thing I've noticed in my career with my business, and meeting many law firms is really, it's the 80-20 rule. Understanding your referring relationships. Are you really staying abreast and keeping those referring partnerships up to speed with the case they just sent to you? Are you sending out monthly emails? And Nefer will discuss some marketing, some technology marketing later in the presentation. But it's all about the communication. And I think if you keep that communication current with your referring partnerships, they're going to keep on wanting to refer more cases to you throughout the year. And all firms, on this call have different priorities and different issues. But I think if you look at these four categorically, you'll find some ways that you can grow your business over the next 12 months. One point also, just I'm just going to have to go back, but is what Stephen Covey talks about is the 4 quadrants and understanding what's important versus urgent. Too many times we all are always working in the urgent. We waited a month to prepare for this presentation or for this case, but where you really become very powerful is working on the important and the urgent and figuring out exactly which, of your to-do list, which is important versus urgent. So work on that quadrant, and I think you'll see some really, some major successes going forward. Knowing your numbers. This to me, in all forms of business, is one area that I don't believe most executives, again, whether you're a one-person firm or a very, one of our clients was a top 10, a Fortune 10 company, one of the biggest companies in the world. And the CFO really did understand one part of the numbers. And I think if you can, whether it's using outside consultants, accountants, CPAs, or unless you're very skilled at numbers, you really must understand at the end of the month, did you make money or did you lose money? Because at the end of the day, you could be creating this great, valuable law firm, but you need to have cash flow to stay in business. Is there a question?
Yep. So we have one talking about the quadrants. What do you mean by work on that quadrant? Who are you referring to, and what are the 4 quadrants?
So there's a book that was been put up by Stephen Covey that talks about when you look at business, there are 4 quadrants. There's the important, there's the urgent and important, and you need to understand in your business which of those 4, and I can actually later on, if you can capture the information, I can send you some specific information on those 4 quadrants so you can see it all broken out, and then it will really help as you do your planning which quadrant you are in currently and where you want to get to build your firm down the road.
Yeah, I'd be happy to include that resource in our follow-up email.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
So back to the numbers. The numbers are the numbers. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And at the end of the day, the end of the week, the end of the month, you really have to reconcile your numbers. And just like if you're doing a $1,000 case for the day, you should know that $1,000 you hit your books, you spent X number of dollars to work on the case, and you made X number of dollars. Too many people work in a fantasy land, and they think they have this money, but cash is king. The money should be in the bank. And if it's not, and this is one thing we'll talk about with billing later and expenses later in the presentation, you really have to capture and understand your cash flow. And the next slide goes into that. I think we skip one, right? So there's key metrics, and depending on your firm, you can determine your own metrics. But these are some real simple ones that you can work on. One is your profit and loss. I always talk about planning for your horizons, but a horizon can be, I said 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, but it may be 6 months from now. You need to have, this kind of pro forma within your budget for 6 months, a year, 2 years. But planning is really important. And I think by having things, I know, by having things in writing, it becomes real. If this is just in your brain, hey, I want to have 100 cases and I want to have 5 attorneys working for me, it's all a dream until you put it in writing. Of course, you can change your, every quarter, every month, you can change what you wrote, but you want to have something as a template to work from. So I strongly encourage you to work on the P&L. And again, if you can't do it yourself, you can hire outside people to help you, create the Excel spreadsheets and pro formas. Cash flow. Cash flow is about having the working capital to grow. I have met many law firms and attorneys that don't have the X number of dollars to hire the next attorney. So if you don't have that cash flow coming in, you could look for a banking relationship, a line of credit, an SBA loan. There are lots of ways. If you're smart and hardworking and having a plan, you can get access to capital. And then you have to be creative, you have to be thoughtful, you have to be very strategic, but the money is out there. So don't ever say, like, because I don't have the cash flow, I can't grow my business. That's not the case. And then I talk about a lot temporary versus full-time. Again, with growing firms and with the millennials right now, and with so many universities looking through their career centers to help their students find new opportunities, there are ways to get internships, to have part-time, to have senior citizens, stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home dads. There are lots of ways, if you're creative, to find good people out there.
Okay, we just had a question come in. Is this the same as Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant?
I know of Robert Kiyosaki. I actually did the merchant processing for Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I believe that's who you're referring to, and that's my background. I don't know without looking at his quadrants if it's the same quadrants. But I promise you after the call, we'll do some research and I can verify that.
Awesome.
Okay. As a continuation of cash flow, one thing in terms of growing your practice and business 101 is to really understand your expenses and how to grow your bottom line profitability. So one really easy way, and again, doesn't matter if you're big or small, is to look at these core expenses that are FedEx and postage, your telephone, your bank fees, your payroll expenses. All these things really add up. And I know everyone is super duper busy, but the truth is if you can spend a half hour every 6 months looking at one of these core competencies, I promise you, given the competitive nature of all these industries, you will save some money. But you really need to pull out what happens is many times these firms either don't send you, they send you an electronic invoice or it's just bundled into your paperwork. So if you can't do it personally, there are organizations that are expense analyst companies that will go through your line items. They may take a percentage of the savings for a couple of years, and I've employed many of these companies. But they'll take a 2-year percentage, but after the 2 years, this is free money to you. So I strongly suggest you look at, and again, for your firm, you may have other ones that are more relevant to your company.
Okay.
So one thing I have to talk about, because I've spent the past 20 years doing it, and I'd be, if I didn't mention it, I would be very upset at myself, is I started 3 credit card processing companies over the past 19 years. We worked as a generalist, working with a myriad of industries. I grew it to about 500 salespeople across the United States. And one of the industries, we had many attorneys and law firms as part of our mix of what we called merchants. So most recently in 2016, we formed a company called LexCharge. And LexCharge is a dedicated company only for the law firm industry. We understand operating accounts, trust accounts. We understand how law firms work. And we have set up a new processing program all through technology-based solutions to reduce and help law firms accept credit cards as a form of payment. The majority of our law firms already do take credit cards, and we have a program that we can help save them money. And if we can't, we have a $500 guarantee. But there are so many nuances to credit cards and so many hidden fees that a law firm may think they're paying 2%, when at the end of the day they're paying 3%. So again, as part of your expense analysis, you should really be looking at your credit card fees, whether you do $100 a month or you do $1 million a year. And if you're interested, just send a quick email to adam@lexcharge.com. Our website is lexcharge.com as well, and you can just check it out, and we'd love to help you if you're in need of that. One thing I talked about in my book called Size Doesn't Matter, Why Small Business is Big Business. This has been a philosophy of mine since I started my first company in, really a couple years out of Lehman Brothers, was the waste money marketing concept. And what I would do is I would take a percentage of my money, and let's say your first year sales are 100 grand. Maybe I take a few $1,000s and do some really, really creative marketing, things that are not typical for you. It could be going to a very atypical conference. It could be doing a direct mail program. It could be doing, taking an airplane trip to visit a referring partner. Take that money and do something completely different. But the reason I call it a waste money marketing concept is I used to put this into my P&L. I would actually put a line item into my budget that said $10,000 is going to be used for wasting money. And because I had it budgeted, I used the money. Versus if you just think you're going to spend some extra money on marketing, but you don't have it in your budget, you may not use it. And we have done some really crazy things over the years. They all didn't work, but enough of them worked where the return has been incredibly significant.
Can you talk about one of those?
You put me on the spot. Oh my God, this wasn't planned for. So one thing that we had done is, and this was really out there, is that I've been looking, because I had a budget as the company grew. I had a bigger budget for wasting money. I took a trip to Australia about 7 years ago to try to get Australian credit card processing. And if I hadn't, and there were very few US companies that were going after the Australian market, cool. But if I hadn't put the money in for the flight and for the trip, I would have never done it. So
I think we need to expand Rocket Matter to Australia so I can go.
Yeah,
I'm ready for it.
It's a fun trip.
Okay, so this is actually a concept that's worked for you.
It has worked,
awesome.
And I strongly suggest it.
Okay, this is a good one. All right, so speaking of marketing, we're about to get into using technology, social media, and marketing communications to grow your business. Someone just asked, will we have access to the slide presentation? Yes, you absolutely will. So after this is over, we'll send out the recording, the slides, and any other resources that we talk about that might support you in this process. So starting to use technology is scary at first. I just gave a presentation at the Georgia Bar last month, and out of the people that were in the room, I'd say maybe 1% of them were actually using technology to their fullest advantage. Technology is a way for you to automate a lot of the processes that can get overwhelming as a business owner. And when you're trying to build a business and build connections, it takes 7 touches for a prospective client to remember you. So there are a ton of ways you can do that now that might not necessarily be you picking up the phone or being face-to-face. You've got social media, you've got networking events, you have mailing lists, advertisements. So I'm going to give you some things to think about and some ways you can start today so that you can get started and maybe start to think about ways that maybe a technology firm or a marketing firm can help you do some of these things. So let's talk about some of the technology available to you. Get ready to drink a lot of water out of the fire hydrant. Rocket Matter. So Rocket Matter is a legal practice management software. It takes you paperless, saves administrative time, and we help law firms grow their profits by 30% in their first year. How do we do that? Really getting our clients to adopt the technology and leverage the technology to its fullest potential. We see a lot of this with firms that have never used practice management software before, and once they start to see that they're saving so much time, and that time turns into more money that they could be bringing in with new clients. So if you're looking to take that volume up and be able to take on more cases and not feel like you're going to lose your mind, practice management software is the way to go. We can definitely talk to you more about Rocket Matter. QuickBooks. Intuit is pushing a lot of their customers to QuickBooks Online. It's the cloud-based version of QuickBooks that helps you keep on top of all of your dollars and do regular reconciliations of your accounts. It's going to have deeper financial reporting at the end of the year, which makes tax time easy. And most attorneys, for compliance purposes, should be doing monthly reconciliations of trust accounts and bank accounts. So it's that 3-way trust accounting and reconciliation. So this is a really helpful tool as well. It does integrate with Rocket Matter, so all of that billable time is not something that you're going to have to enter in again into a new system. Those invoices that you run, the payments you collect will all go over to QuickBooks for you, which is really great. Fastcase, it's easy to use legal research. A lot of state bars actually will either have that accessible to their members for free. A lot of them will subsidize the cost of Fastcase or include it if you're a dues paying member. Fastcase is great because it's not as expensive as the Westlaw and LexisNexis of the world kind of legal research. It's not Wikipedia, so it's not going to get you in trouble if you go to court and you're trying to rely on that. It's a little bit more robust than a Google Scholar. So it's super, super helpful. If you're not using it, you might want to take a look at it. We've got FactBox. FactBox is great for trial attorneys. It helps you to kind of map out visually the facts of the case and helps you get ready for trial. Evernote is awesome. I use it every single day to keep track of notes, keep track of projects. But when we're talking about networking, Evernote is great because it's got a built-in business card scanner. I recently read an article on Lawyerist about how lawyers manage networking tickler systems. So what you do in Evernote is you create a notebook for each bucket. So you've got your inbox, you've got initiate, re-engaged, engaged, follow up, disengaged, and other. So what you do is whenever you get a new business card, you throw it into the inbox bucket. And then you process your inbox once a week and move each business card around into each notebook. So it'll go into initiate a conversation or re-engage this person. And you can go through your buckets and see how you're doing with all of those connections, move them around and make sure you're touching that pretty regularly. So as you collect more information about each contact, you can put it into that note as well. So you know that they have a dog named Marley, or their kids just went away to camp or just came back from camp. So you know you've got stuff that you can talk to them about and really start building some meaningful relationships. Evernote's great for a ton of other stuff too, like taking notes about your cases. That also does sync over to Rocket Matter. And the last thing we want to talk about in terms of technology is Trello. So if you've ever heard of the Kanban technique for getting through some of those ideas and big projects, Trello is amazing. It's a visual board that basically gives you your to-dos, and you can move those to-dos from bucket to bucket or from board to board, helps you see how much you've actually gotten done, and keeps all of those ideas in one spot. So when you're talking about business development and you start to get some ideas about marketing or some ideas about networking, or you want to plan an event or a CLE at your firm, you can use Trello to plan some of these things and keep the buck moving and make sure you stay on top of some of these projects that might not directly be billing related. So that's some quick technology stuff for you. I hope it wasn't too much. If you got any questions, definitely let me know. So the next thing we're going to cover is social media. This is a great way for you to get brand exposure on the internet. If we're keeping it really real, if you don't have a presence on social media, sometimes people might not think you exist. So four that you definitely want to be a part of. No, I'm not talking about Snapchat or Instagram. Facebook is great because you can create a business page on Facebook. Google Plus is, it's a tough one, right? Because I'm not sure that a ton of people use it, but that Google Plus listing will also get you more in terms of SEO. Google does kind of rule the world when it comes to people doing searches between Google and YouTube. Those are the #1 search engines out there. So having a presence on Google Plus might get you some points with the SEO gods. Twitter. This is not one of my favorite things either, but you know what? It's a necessary evil. People tweet. And so having a presence on Twitter and maybe posting a blog post that you just did or something of that nature, or retweeting someone who has some thought processes that you agree with, then, you know, tweet it. Or listen, if you want to get out there and you enjoy tweeting, go for it. But, you know, make sure you keep it professional and on brand. And then LinkedIn. I really like LinkedIn for businesses. It's really a way for you to get that business-oriented voice out there. What is the voice of your firm? And it's also incumbent to have a personal profile too. So you've got your law firm's profile and then your profile. Jeff is going to talk a little bit more about this later, but your personal brand and your firm's brand have a lot to do with each other, and the strength of each really does, one helps the other. So you should definitely have 2 profiles on LinkedIn as well. So this is a lot to manage, but there are tools out there to help you get these things under control. A few of my favorites, this is one that we use here at Rocket Matter. We use Buffer to help us kind of manage some of our tweets for the day, because, you know, you should be as consistent as possible. People should know that you're constantly present, and there's something called a news feed. So if you haven't done anything in a while and nobody's really interacting or commenting on it, people aren't going to see it. So you should be fairly regular on some of these accounts. So Buffer is a great way to manage some of those social media accounts. Hootsuite is another great one. Sprout Social will actually manage all of these for you in one location. And then TweetDeck is another one. So the benefit of these is that you get a lot of analytics with them. So you get to see how many followers you have, how many you gained, how many you lost, meaningful interactions, anything that might have been really notable, you'll get sort of a report that you can keep track of. If you had one post that got like the most likes that month, you'll be able to see that in your analytics. You know what starts to work for your online brand, and then you can keep doing more of that, right? So this is also helpful too if you have an agency that's working on this stuff for you, and say that relationship is over and you want to take it back in-house, you don't lose any of those numbers. Being able to be retrospective and see what's worked for you historically is a really good thing. And as long as you're managing it on one of these tools, you'll always have that consistency, whether it's you doing it in-house or you go from agency to agency, you'll have it all in one place. So that's another perk of these as well. And then marketing communication. So how often are you staying in touch with prospective clients, with vendors, with referring partners? This is one of those things that's going to help you stay consistent and send out like a monthly email blast. And with marketing and with sales, it's really difficult with attorneys. You know, you need, sometimes in some states, you need prior approval to, publish any advertising content or put a billboard up or put an ad in a newspaper. So depending on the state that you're in, marketing and advertising regulations are really tough for attorneys. So with that, education isn't sales. So try to be as educational as possible in your marketing communications, or maybe talking about, your staff and some really cool things you're doing. Like if one of your staff members just became a victim advocate for the state, maybe putting that out there and letting people know, hey, we've got an in-house victim advocate now. If you're doing personal injury law, that might be a really good thing to put out there. So make an announcement in your newsletter. So some of these email marketing tools that are pretty popular, that work really well, and are simple to use. They're a ton of templates and easy to manage your mailing list. MailChimp, Constant Contact, and Mad Mimi are the ones that we've used in the past and we're very familiar with. So if you've got any questions about those, we'd be happy to answer them. So how do you put all of this stuff into action? Let's put together a quick business development calendar. So here are a couple things that you should today or sometime this week find some time to put on your calendar for the rest of 2017. So you should be reviewing your firm's numbers monthly, quarterly, or yearly, depending on what it is. You know the things that you should be looking at monthly. You know the things that you should probably be looking at quarterly, and you definitely know what you should be looking at yearly. This is the stuff that's going to help you really plan out your goals. It's going to help you budget. It's going to help you forecast and see what's working and see what's not. So Put something on your calendar to regularly review your numbers and stick to it. Social media posts should be happening a few times a week. If you're using one of the tools that I mentioned, you can set up a social media calendar right in there so you can set it and forget it once a month and not even worry about it. If you want to be a little bit more current with it, maybe do it a couple of times a week. But definitely get those social media accounts up and keep them as current as possible. Put it on your calendar. Blogging. Blogging should be happening 2 to 4 times per month. It's content for your social media accounts, definitely for LinkedIn, and will really help people to start seeing you as an authority in the area of law that you practice and in the community. So blogging is definitely a good thing. Business retreats. So if you are on a part of a firm that is a little bit larger, planning a retreat for people that you consider thought leaders or leadership in the firm is a really good thing. Doing stuff with your entire staff is also a really good thing, but the business retreats should really be focused on you, focusing on your big ideas and your direction in the firm and the direction that you want to take your business. So if you're a solo, start looking for business retreats that are happening with people in your community or people that think in a similar way to you, so that you can get some of those ideas cooking. One of the things that is happening down in Florida, for example, in October is MacTrack Legal, and it's for attorneys that run their firms exclusively on Macs. And so a lot of solos that run their firms on Macs will actually come to this and see what's going on, with technology in the industry, get some information on cutting edge law. There's a ton of great speakers. It's a trip to Disney with your family. Gets you away from the office, but also gets you thinking about big ideas. So that's an example of something that could be happening that you could take the time to go to. So put that on your calendar as well. Networking as often as you can, and make it meaningful. Just because you attend a cocktail party doesn't mean you networked. Start building your list. Start getting those connections. Use Evernote to start managing your business contacts. Make those buckets and start to really work them and make sure that you're making the occasional touches that you need, that might not be some of the passive ones like social media. The newsletter communication with your entire list should be happening maybe once a month or once a quarter, depending on what kind of content you have and the kind of time you have, really. Keep it educational so it's not super advertising, and sometimes that turns people off. So educate, your list in your community. Good topics are like new laws that are coming out that might prompt people to use your services. I once got a newsletter from an estate planning firm that was talking about changes in the tax law that made me think, oh, maybe I could use their services now. So that's the kind of stuff that you might want to throw into a newsletter. And then holiday mailers. Honestly, it's kind of nice to get a card in the mail. So that's something you might want to start working on, mid-October, early November, and, get those out the door. Just make them a standard part of your operations. People will start looking forward to getting those cards from you in the mail every year. So we did not talk about online advertising today, by the way. That's its own webinar. But these things that we're talking about today are a few things that can really start to develop new business for you. It's going to get your name out there in cost-effective ways that you can implement today. If you don't have some of these items in your calendar for the rest of the year, find some time, please, this week. Put them there. You really will not regret it. So I'm going to let Jeff take over on some strategies to build your personal and company brand.
Great. And are there any questions? We have like 6 minutes left, so I want to make sure we get all the questions. One thing about the holiday mailers, one thing that we've done at our company over the past couple of years is do Thanksgiving letters and just say thank you for the referral, thanks for your business, and it gets a little more standing out than the Christmas cards and gifts that are coming in that week. Is that a question?
Yeah. Someone's asking about the MacTrack Legal. So I'll send out some more information on that when we send out the wrap-up email.
Okay, great. In terms of building your personal and company brand, all law firms are not the same. although you're all in many similar industries, criminal, PI, family law, whatever, we're all different and you're all different. And I think what happens is too many people just have a standard website, and it really, to Nefra's point about social media, it has to stay current. So every quarter, you should at least be going on and using WordPress. Even for people like me who are not very techy, it's actually quite simple to update the website. Tell your stories. I think too many times people want to hear human stories. They don't want to always be, yes, the firm is great, your firm name is terrific, but they want to get under the covers and understand the stories of you and your people. And I think that's really, really critical. And in that regard, the culture, these are not just big words, culture, vision, mission. It really should mean something. And at our organization, we really believe in this stuff. And make your company different. Make the people want to go to work. Even though we all work and you work lots of hours, there's ways to differentiate yourself and make it fun. One other thing I would definitely suggest, and Nefra shared with me last week, the idea of having an off-site meeting. Their senior management actually flew out of Florida a couple of weeks ago to the mountains up in the Berkshires, and they got their senior team away from the office, and that's where, as Nefra said, really big ideas start to happen. Going out for dinner is great, but the truth is everyone's rushing back to see their family, their friends, get back home. Getting away from the office for a couple of days, besides building the really authentic friendships with your coworkers, lots of great stuff can happen from that. The idea of the personal brand. So I know many law firms will list their attorneys on the website. I also think it's very important to create a personal website. I've created a site called jeffshavitz.com. I just share more about my story with my audience, and people want to work with thought leaders. And if you become a thought leader and an authority in your given sphere of legal, it's that much more welcoming that a prospective client's going to come and join your organization. So write articles, make a book. I mean, the truth is, after my first book, I was fortunate, I got picked up by a publisher, but now with self-publishing, it is so easy to write a book using the Amazon tools or other technology tools. Just sit down, write the book, get out there, get onto radio, get on TV, speak at local conferences, get involved in philanthropy. Getting involved in the local community is more powerful than even work stuff. And we're doing it to help the common good of the charity, but the truth is you are meeting people in a very, very easy way that will help build your personal brand and help drive traffic for your company. And at the end of the day, this is just the golden rule, just give, and it all comes back eventually. So I think we've got 2 minutes left, and if we have some questions, we will answer those.
Okay, so this one says, I've had a difficult time generating enough paying business to actually scale operations, either with subcontractors or full-time employees. What's the most effective way to land paying clients for a solo patent attorney? Note, patents are expensive on an individual basis, but it's difficult to land multiple clients who can pay $10K plus for them.
Mm-hmm. So what I would say, without really giving this too much thought, is people need trademarks, patents, copyrights. People need, and not every, like we just trademarked I'm an advisor for another company, and I met an attorney at a conference. But what I find is that people go to these, I'm not saying you, go to a networking conference, but they walk in with their friend and they leave with their friend. And I think it's so powerful to go to these meetings. Really, I prefer to go alone, because then you can't have the excuse of hanging on to a friend. But I think you have to get out there more. I think if you're a solo in that field, you've got to own your territory. So it's one thing to be, solo and try to cover the country. Wherever you live, you've got to get yourself out there. And I'm happy if you want to talk offline, you can reach out to me, and I can give you some techniques that have worked to build your practice.
Yeah, and I would try to look at industry-based conferences that might be coming to your area that maybe you can travel to or drive to at first. There are a ton of technology conferences that happen all the time. I mean, we go to a lot of them as Rocket Matter, but that might be a good place to just walk around and see what people are doing and what they're developing, and not necessarily offer your services, but just say, hey, you know, nice to meet you. Here's my card if you ever need anything.
And also,
I don't think that that's soliciting necessarily. I think it's just, you know, saying,
right.
hey, this is what I do.
Yep.
You know?
I would agree with you. I would agree.
Okay. Any other questions?
And my email, to anyone, is jeff@lexcharge.com. So if you have a specific question, feel free to call the office or email me, and I will get back within you know, 1 day to you.
And mine is nefra@rocketmatter.com. If we don't have any other questions, you guys, it is actually 1:40, so we will wrap up. If there's anything that we didn't get to, we'll be sure to get to it as we send out that reminder email, or the wrap-up email rather. That is going to have the recording. It'll have the slides. And then any other resources that we mentioned, like the quadrants. So we'll definitely get that information to you around noon tomorrow. This is not for CLE credit. This was an educational webinar, so there will be no CLE code or number or anything like that. But definitely packed with information. We hope you enjoyed it and that you'll join us for another one very soon. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks again. Bye-bye.